Welcome to the entertaining Talking Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to go over the 10 prospects that, as of now, I could see the New York Giants taking at the number 11 overall selection as I start to dive a little bit into the NFL draft content. Before I get started, I just want to give a huge thank you, first off, to all you guys, all the members that were in my stream last night. You guys were terrific. I had a blast doing that. But I wanted to point out one in particular, Keenan, who has an Instagram page. I'm going to put it in the link below. He was kind enough to make my my banner on my channel. So I wanted to give him a quick shout. I want to give him a big thank you. And everybody that helps my channel, whether it's watching the videos, hitting the thumbs up, providing me with things like the backgrounds that you see, thumbnails, everything else, my intro. You guys have been incredible for the growth of my channel. So I want to say thank you to each and every one of you guys. But please check out Keenan. He's an aspiring graphic designer. So please check him out. But we're going to jump into the 10 players that I could see the New York Giants taking at 11. And I know the first thing you're going to think, it's way too early to be talking draft. And you're right. We still got 3 months before the draft. But it doesn't hurt to get to know some of these prospects that the New York Giants could potentially be bringing in this year's draft class. And right now, the New York Giants have a ton of needs. Mainly on the offensive side, most Giant fans feel they want to go wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. There's some Giants fans that want to take 7 wide receivers in the first 7 rounds of this draft. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you guys want to hammer home those weapons. You want to make sure you can get the most out of Daniel Jones. Completely understandable, and I'm on board right now with that being our biggest need. Definitely on the offensive side of the football. On the defensive side, I've talked a lot about cornerback. A lot of people think Julian Love could get the job done. Maybe they sign somebody in free agency. Maybe they sign wide receiver in free agency. It's why it's too early. We don't know what they're going to do in free agency, but at this point in time, I'll go over some of the top corners, wide receivers. In addition to that, linebacker, coverage linebacker, edge rusher. Those are things we could be looking at. And another thing I'm going to continue to hammer home, as Giant fans, don't forget about the offensive line. It is far from a finished product. We need to continue to bring in depth, and we'll see what we got at that guard spot. But there's definitely options that the Giants could look at relatively early in this year's draft. But we're going to jump into it. We're going to go over some of the prospects that I like for the New York Giants. And before I get started, I want to say this is not my order. I'm not telling you that Micah Parsons is my number. You know, before you guys jump on me and you say, how is Devontae Smith not number 1? This is a random order of guys that I could see the New York Giants taking at number 11, the 10 most likely candidates. And the first guy I am going to talk about is Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons, before the year started, he opted out due to the virus. It was regarded as one of the top 5 prospects in this year's draft class. Still is. The guy is a freak, or one of, close to top 5, if not top 5. And there's a very good chance he may not fall to us at 11, as is a lot of the guys on this list. When you list 10 guys, it's the draft. Crazy things happen. People fall. Some of these guys may fall, even though you may not believe that as of now. But as far as Parsons goes, I think he's a perfect or near perfect schematic fit for the New York Giants. If you listen to a lot of the experts, if you watch a lot of the film, a lot of people actually feel like Parsons is better served on the outside. Other people feel like he's better served as a Mike linebacker. The Giants want versatility. That's exactly what Micah Parsons would come with. The other thing I want to point out is almost every expert that I read about Parsons, he is meant to fit a scheme that is blitz heavy. What do the New York Giants want to bring here with Patrick Graham? They want to be blitz heavy. And having a chess piece like a Micah Parsons, a guy that you can move on both the inside and the outside, could be a really good fit for the New York Giants, and he's a prospect I definitely have my eye on. He's 6'3", 245 pounds. And like I said, some feel he can play the mic. Some people feel like he can play on the outside. But definitely a guy to keep your eye on. He is a fantastic prospect out of Penn State. The next guy I'm going to touch on is the wide receiver that is gaining all the headlines, and rightfully so. He won the Heisman Trophy. He's been incredible for Alabama. I think he caught for over 1,700 yards in the regular season. He had over 200 yards in the national championship against the Ohio State Buckeyes. And he was incredible before he went down. I think he won the MVP of that game. I can't imagine he didn't. He was incredible. The one perceived weakness of his is he's undersized. He's 6'1", 175. And if you look at some of the tape, did a film breakdown with him with Fireside Giants, he does get pushed off the line of scrimmage from time to time, and it's something he'll have to work on. He'll have to put on some muscle. Now, there's ways you could combat that. Alabama put him in motion a lot. They use him in the slot a lot. He's a very versatile wide receiver, and he has a ton of strengths. The guy can go up and catch the 50-50. He's got great leap ability. He's a polished route runner. He can catch the ball in traffic. He's got good hands. Great body control. Not great speed, but definitely sufficient speed. He's not a guy that's going to blow you away, but he's an all-around wide receiver, a really good route runner, that's going to find a way to get open, and he's one of the 3 best wide receivers in this year's draft class. A lot of Giants fans, because he's the hot name right now, don't think there's any possibility he could drop to 11. Well, I got news for you. He could. CeeDee Lamb dropped a lot further than people thought, so on and so forth, right? Henry Ruggs, all 3 wide receivers, I think, fell outside of the top 10 last year, even though all 3 of them were thought to be very good prospects. And Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle, the next guy I'm going to talk about, both of them could easily jump Devontae Smith in teams' rankings as this process plays out. Right now, if you look at the mocks, most people have him as the number 1 wide receiver, if not number 2. We'll have to wait and see how it all plays out. But is it a possibility? Yeah, for sure. He could be there at number 11. And if he is, he's certainly a guy the New York Giants will have his cell phone number. Next up, we're going to talk about Jalen Waddle, his teammate. Jalen Waddle stands at 5'11". Also plays for Alabama, a school that's had a ton of great wide receivers in recent memory. Obviously, last year, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy. Now you get 2 other great wide receivers in this year's draft class. Waddle was actually the more targeted wide receiver before he went down. Then Smith really blew up with the Alabama Crimson Tide. A lot of people look at Jalen Waddle, and of course he has the injury. That's a little, that's a concern. But a lot of people look at Jalen Waddle, and they think he's a slot wide receiver because he's 5'11". That couldn't be further from the truth if you watch his game film. The guy's a burner. He is going to impress at the combine with his speed. I expect him to run in the mid-4.2s, 4.25, 4.27, 4.29. This guy is fast. He has blazing speed. He's a terrific athlete. You can play him on both the inside and the out. He's a very versatile wide receiver, a word that Joe Judge uses commonly. Also, both these receivers, both Smith and Waddle, go to Alabama. Judge has ties there. That's something that you got to talk about. In addition to that, Sean Spencer, our D-line coach, has ties to Parsons with Penn State. Something that was a common theme for the New York Giants last year, both in free agency and in the draft. But keep your eye on Jalen Waddle as a potential prospect that could fall to the New York Giants at number 11 that would fill one of our primary needs. Next up, you see a theme here. We're sticking with Alabama. And now we're going back to the defensive side of the football. And we're going to talk about Patrick Surtain, who a lot of people feel is the number 1 corner in this year's draft. And as of now, based on what I've seen, based on what I've read, I would say that he's the safest. I do not think he has the most upside. There was another corner in this video I'm going to get to that I think has more upside, but is definitely riskier than Patrick Surtain. I think Surtain would fit this scheme very well. He's 6'2". He's 203. He's balanced. He can play in both zone coverage and press. He's better in man press coverage. That is what the New York Giants want to bring here. The one weakness to his game that people worry about, much like DeAndre Baker when we brought him in. If you remember Baker was known as a press cover corner, didn't have high-end speed. He ran in the mid-4.5s. They think Surtain will run in the mid-4.5s as well. Of course, the former teammate of McKinney, but a lot of scouts feel like he could get burnt over the top from very fast wide receivers. So that's something to point out. But he's certainly a guy that will go in the first half of the first round, or at least that's the way it looks right now. Next guy we're going to talk about is I call him the flavor of the month. He is a terrific athlete, and he is a guy that is soaring up the minds of New York Giants fans, and rightfully so. When you watch Kyle Pitts on film, this guy is a special talent. Now, I think a lot of Giants fans look at where they're picking, and they don't think one of these receivers are going to fall to him. And some Giants fans, I think, are trying to fall in love with a playmaker. And when you watch Pitts, it's hard not to fall in love. What you worry about here is it our biggest need? He's a tight end. However, he is very versatile. He plays on the outside, and to me, he's more of a wide receiver than a tight end. He's a willing blocker. I think that's the right way to put it with Kyle Pitts. He's not a bad blocker. It's also not a strength of his. It's kind of what people said about Evan Ingram coming in. He's a similar prospect. He's bigger than Ingram. He's 6'6". He is a great athlete. He could go up and get it. I think he's a better all-around tight end. And he's a physical specimen. And he's a guy, if he is available for the Giants, they'll at least think long and hard about potentially bringing him in, depending on who else is there on the board. They say he's a serviceable linebacker. He's 6'6", 250. He's been used as both a tight end and wide receiver at the collegiate level. The other thing I want to point out about Pitts is he would help in the red zone. That's something that we struggled with mightily last year. You get a tall target like that, as good as he is, that would certainly help. So I wanted to point out Kyle Pitts, and yeah, he's a possibility. He's one of the 10 most likely candidates, in my opinion. Next guy we're going to talk about is Kwity Paye, and he has really short up draft charts, rightfully so. When you watch this guy has high upside, really high upside. And the only way I would see Paye being a realistic possibility is if Leonard Williams is not back with the New York Giants. And we address wide receiver in free agency. But if we could afford to take a D-end in the first round and Williams is not here, he could be the guy that fills the vacancy. He is a special player. He only played 4 games last year for Michigan, but in his first 3 starts, he had 25 quarterback pressures. To put that in perspective, at that point in time in the season, the league leaders had 35, only they had played 7 or 8 games. He had only played 3 contests. He was averaging 9 pressures, or just over 8 pressures a game. He was known as a very good run defender, and he added to his game before going down with the injury. He only played 4 games this year. He has a very high ceiling, incredible athlete. He's a hand-in-the-dirt defender, so he's not going to be an outside linebacker. 6'4", 272. And yeah, a guy that you definitely want to look at. But if Williams is back, I don't think Kwity Paye will be on the radar. Next up, Greg Rousseau. And Rousseau is a little bit more versatile. I think you can play him on the outside linebacker. Massive man, okay? 6'7", 265. And you look at the numbers and you're blown away. Didn't play this year due to the pandemic. He had 19.5 tackles for loss. He had 15.5 sacks with Miami the year before. And if you just look at the numbers, you don't look at the tape, you don't look at what the experts have to say, you say to yourself, how is this guy not going in the top 5? And that's where he was going before people started looking at his tape. And almost every expert you listen to will tell you that he is a developmental player. Now, sometimes developmental players work out. JPP was a developmental player. There's a number of developmental players. JPP was an athletic freak. And as good of an athlete as he is, I don't think he's on the level of JPP. But he's underdeveloped, but a high ceiling. That's the book on Greg Rousseau. If the Giants were to take him, which I don't think they will, I think it'll take some time for him to develop at the position. But we'll see how his stock trends as we approach the draft. I've got one more guy after this, and this again, 2 more guys rather. This is not really a guy I think we take at 11, but I wanted to point him out. I didn't want to just give you guys a laundry list of cornerbacks. I could have put J.C. Horn, who may be a little bit more likely for the Giants. I could see the Giants taking a guard, maybe if they traded down and filled some other needs in free agency. The least likely of the 10 scenarios, but I wanted to point him out. Wyatt Davis of Ohio State, keep an eye on him. He is an absolute mauler. Seems to be the type of guy that the New York Giants would want on their offensive line. They don't seem incredibly encouraged with Will Hernandez. People seem to think they could move on from Kevin Zeitler. So I do think interior offensive line in the first couple of rounds, more so probably in the second round, is a possibility. But I wanted to point out, Davis, he's 6'4", 313, and people say he's an instant plug-and-play starter at the NFL level. His best year was 2019, actually, but a very good guard prospect, and most people have him as the best interior offensive lineman in this year's class. Next up, we got Caleb Farley, and then we're going to have one more after that. And Farley's another guy that's been moving up. He was actually the first player to opt out due to the virus. Did not play this year. Played 2 years at Vatech, had a really strong year last year, in which he had 20 tackles, 4 interceptions, 12 pass breakups. Where he has the ceiling, in my opinion, higher than Patrick Surtain, but he's more unproven. He also dealt with an injury his first year in college ball. From what the scouts say, outstanding ball skills, and he's good in press coverage. Has ideal size, speed, and fluidity. So definitely a guy to keep. 6'2", 207. So both corners here are tall, both at 6'2". That's something that you don't always see. So another guy to really keep your eye on is Caleb Farley. I've seen him mocked as high as 9. And then finally, the last guy I'm going to bring up is, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in this year's draft class, and that's Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase, by all accounts, before the offseason started, was regarded as by far the best wide receiver prospect. A lot of people had him going in the top 3 or 4 in the draft. Sat out this year due to the virus. The previous year with Joe Burrow, okay, a lot of people think he had a lot to do with why Burrow went number 1 overall. When Burrow won the Heisman Trophy, Ja'Marr Chase that year caught for 1,780 yards and 20 touchdowns in his sophomore year. He's the complete package. Great route running, hands, ball skills, good blocker too. Was regarded as a top 3 or 4 prospect. This guy, to me, if you ask me today, is the best wide receiver in this year's draft class. And if he were to fall to the New York Giants at number 11, I think you run up to the table. Is it possible? Sure. There's 2 other great wide receivers in it that played this year. He did not. Maybe some teams will look at that. Maybe he'll have a poor combine. But Ja'Marr Chase is a freak. Do I think he'll be there? Probably not. But in the end, these are the 10 prospects that I wanted to go over, tell you guys that I could see the New York Giants taking at number 11 as we get prepared for the draft in just 3 short months. It may sound like a long time, but it'll be here before you know it. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.